We'll go ahead and get started. So this is a webinar to talk about the American Water Infrastructure Act, Section 2012, promoting asset management via the Capacity Development Program. And before we get started, I just wanted to mention that you all should see a Q&A box. So if you have questions throughout the webinar, we're asking you to go ahead and type your questions into the Q&A box as we're going along. Know that we'll be answering your questions at the end of the webinar, but please do include your questions in that box so that way we can stay on top of the questions that we need to answer towards the end. Okay. So today's agenda, we'll be going over the requirements related to capacity development that was included in the America's Water Infrastructure Act. What are those implementation requirements? We'll also be talking about some asset management resources that are available to all of you as you look to implement these requirements. We'll also be talking about the Environmental Finance Center's implementation support that's available regarding these requirements, and then of course we'll go into some Q&A. Okay, so related to those requirements, AWIA Section 2012 included the following asset management language. Rather than reading through all of that language that's up on your screen, I do want to highlight that the main thing to know here is that the Section 2012, it requires that state drinking water programs consider and include, as appropriate, asset management into their state capacity development strategies. So consistent with this statutory change, state drinking water programs are expected to revise their capacity development strategies to include a description of how asset management will be promoted through addressing a number of questions that we'll get to in just a moment. Also included in the AWIA Section 2012 asset management language that included requirements around reporting. So related to reporting, this amendment requires states to include an update of activities to encourage asset management in the governor's report every 3 years. Included in this report is effectiveness of the capacity development strategy and progress made toward improving the technical, managerial, and financial capacity of public water systems. And then bolded there is that includes efforts of the state to encourage development by public water systems of asset management plans and to assist public water systems in training relevant and appropriate persons in implementing such asset management plans. In addition to this, another requirement that you can see related to the AWIA Section 2012 asset management language, there also includes this requirement that not later than 5 years after the date of enactment of the AWIA provision, and not less often than every 5 years thereafter, the administrator, that being here at EPA, shall review and, if appropriate, update materials, including handbooks, training, technical information for owners, managers, and operators of public water systems. So that is a requirement that is on our side here at EPA. So some of the implementation of capacity development program requirements related to the America's Water Infrastructure Act, that can be found on EPA's website. I know many of you are aware that there was a memo that was released at the end of last year that outlined what those requirements are and how EPA is suggesting that states and public water systems move forward with implementing those requirements. So again, you want to make sure that all of you see and are aware that that memo is available online. That's the link to where you can find that memo. And then also all of you should have these slides available to you as well through the webinar portal. So you want to make sure that you see that memorandum. It goes into more details about all of the requirements that EPA is looking for in terms of the updating of your capacity development strategies, the time frames, as well as the things that are required in terms of the governor's report. So there are some caveats related to some of the implementation of some of those requirements. So there may be some limited situations where there is not a requirement of a revision of a state's capacity development strategy. And so, for example, a state may have an existing capacity development strategy or is already implementing an existing state statute or regulation requiring asset management that already meets all of these requirements. So in these cases, the state must submit for review a memo to the EPA region verifying that the strategy and or the statutory requirement or regulation is meeting all of the Safe Drinking Water Act requirements related to asset management. So again, we know that some of your states, you already have asset management that's being included in your capacity development strategies. You already have your various state laws that are requiring asset management considerations. So again, this would not be a new requirement for you. All we would need is we would need to see in terms of a memo submitted to your EPA regional office that shows that you're actually already doing these asset management requirements. And then this memo, it can be submitted by December 31st, 2021.
Yes, so hello, I'm Allison Flanagan. I'm also here at the EPA. So right now I'm here to discuss about the reports to the governor. So as you all know, the governor's report is due every 3 years. And now with AWIA, we now have a new mandate under Section 420C3 of SDWA. So number one is the efficiency of the capacity development strategy. And now number two, the progress made towards improving technical, managerial, and financial capacity of public water systems, including the efforts of states to encourage development by PWSs of asset management plans and to assist PWSs in the training relevant and appropriate persons in implementing such asset management plans. So a couple of deadlines that we have to consider. So just like what Alyssa was saying, if you currently have asset management promotion in your strategy, you must address this in the 2020 report to the governor. So in September 30th, 2020. And those are for the states that currently have asset management promotion in their strategies. The next date that we should consider is December 31st, 2021. So the state drinking water programs are expected to submit their revised capacity development strategies to their U.S. EPA regional offices for approval. So everybody, regardless if you do or do not have asset management right now, you must have some sort of asset management implementations in your strategy by 2021. And then for those who do not currently have asset management in their strategy, for the next governor's report, so the governor's report that's due in 2023, you must address asset management in that governor's report. So if you currently do not have asset management right now, you don't have to worry about this year, but in 2023, you must include it.
Okay, so we know those were a lot of various dates right there that we just threw at you, but remember that you have these dates that are available in the memo. You also have the webinar slides, so feel free to just keep those on hand as you're thinking about your next steps and what you'll need to do in order to meet those deadlines. So the next item we're going to talk about is what must the asset management description include. This is also outlined in the memo that went out last year, but just to highlight, the asset management description must include how the state will use 5 core questions. So there's a 5 core questions framework that we also outlined in that memo. So again, the asset management description must include how the state is going to use the 5 core questions framework as appropriate to encourage the development of and assist in the implementation of asset management plans. The framework is composed of the following 5 core questions that we'll be going through, and I'll go ahead and get to that right now. So those 5 core questions include what is the current state of the utility's assets. Now, this is important because it's an essential step, because it's not possible to manage assets until public water systems know where the assets are, how many they have, and which ones would be considered critical to the system's operation. So that's the very first question. The second question is, what is the utility's required sustainable level of service? So what we mean by that is the utility's short and long-term performance standards that take into account the customer's expectations. And again, we go through this in a little bit more detail in the memo that was released at the end of last year. So that's the second question. The third question is, which assets are critical to sustained performance? So again, a public water systems asset management program acknowledges the assets that are most critical, helps the systems prioritize resource expenditures and implement a maintenance schedule. So this is a critical part of asset management. The fourth question there, what are the utility's best minimum life cycle cost, capital improvement plan, and operations and maintenance strategies? So capital improvement plans, operations and maintenance, and personnel expenditures, they account for a very significant portion of a typical system's expenses, approximately 85%. So it's really important to have a good grasp on those areas in terms of your asset management planning. And then we have that fifth question there, and that last question is, what is the utility's best long-term financing strategy? So knowing the full economic cost of services provided, that's critical for making sound financial decisions and devising a long-term financing strategy to provide the services that are needed at the best appropriate cost. So again, our expectation is that you will be using this 5 core question framework in terms of including your asset management revisions and your capacity development strategies, and then also using these 5 core questions as you're looking towards your governor's reports.
Okay, so now we are going to discuss our asset management resources provided by the EPA. So this is a little screenshot of our resource website for the capacity development and operations certification. So once you are on this, the main page, at the bottom left corner is our asset management website. And there is a link as well that you can get straight to it. So the following resources are some guides for those who may be new to asset management or starting to look at your asset management strategies. These are kind of basic guides, but I wanted to sort of highlight them, and these are also available on our website. So the first one is our 2018 State Asset Management Initiatives document. This document summarizes what initiatives states are currently taking in regard to asset management. The second one, the reference guide for asset management tools. So this guide is for state staff and technical assistant providers who are assisting small to medium-sized drinking water or wastewater systems and identifying resources that can be used to implement asset management practices. So these are like a bunch of tools and resources. There's a couple of software programs, a lot of guides, some Excel-based tools that people can use. It also provides a framework to assist systems in all aspects of developing and implementing asset management plans. The third one, taking stock of your water system, a simple asset inventory for very small drinking water systems. So this is a guide to help owners, managers, this is a guide to help very small water systems, such as manufactured homes, communities, and homeowners associations. And it also helps them assess the condition by preparing a simple asset inventory. And then the last one, the guide for our owners and operators of small community water systems, to help understand the basic concepts of asset management and provides the tools to develop an asset management plan. So very small CWSs may have some difficulty in completing some of the worksheets, but medium CWSs may find the worksheets a little bit too simple. So it sort of kind of up to you and sort of what your system is. But yeah, so these are some of the resources that are available, and we also have a lot more resources available on our website. And now we're going to lead into our implementation support. So we currently have the EFC, the Environmental Finance Center, to kind of discuss some of their projects. So we have Nicholas Willis and Heather Himmelberger. So EFC, they have 3 projects that help support the implementation of asset management capacity development. So the first one is to support states by updating and revising their capacity development strategies. The second one is to develop asset management resources for local decision makers. And the third one is to develop NCWS's asset management planning tools. So without further ado, here is Nicholas.
All right, thank you. So yes, the Wichita State University Environmental Finance Center, whom I'm representing today, and the Southwest Environmental Finance Center, who Heather is representing today, will be providing assistance over 2020 and 2021 in states in updating their capacity development strategies to include asset management. We are drawing on a pretty deep base of asset management of the environmental finance centers in the country. The Wichita State and Southwest ESC probably have the deepest experience in providing systems with kind of one-on-one technical assistance in implementing asset management, so we have some of the on-the-ground experience. We also regularly train systems throughout the United States and its territories in asset management implementation and provide outreach to them as well. For this project, we'll be providing implementation assistance in updating the capacity development strategy. And actually, Heather was around when the initial capacity development strategies were rolled out in the 1990s, so she's deeply familiar with that process as well. What we anticipate is that we will provide state primacy agencies kind of a suite of options depending on the needs that are arising. Some of these could provide on-site assistance. It could be providing facilitations for EPA regional meetings where several of the capacity development folks from each primacy agency could get together. We fully expect there to be webinars on specific items related to revisions of the capacity development strategies. And then we additionally anticipate more one-on-one assistance via telephone, email conversations, and things like that. And finally, related to the decision makers or board of directors project and the non-community water suppliers, we expect to be developing resources and tools that can be used by the state or water systems or technical service providers that are providing training or technical assistance to public water suppliers. On the next slide, some of our goals here are to provide easy access to resources that are already in existence. There's a lot of asset management work that has gone on at the state level. There's not been a whole lot of effort to date to centralize this, make this information more readily available. And Heather's group is working on that right now. She'll give you an update in a couple slides. We also hope to develop generalized asset management training materials. So one thing you might consider after leaving the webinar is what type of training material do we really want for asset management as part of our capacity development strategy in our respective states. We'd love to have your input on that. We are going to develop specific materials for boards of directors. And again, this is a question for those on the webinar today. what are the issues you see with boards of directors, governing bodies, when it comes to implementing asset management at water supplies in your jurisdiction, and then also that information for non-community water systems. Non-community water systems are probably the most varied water suppliers out there because there's a whole gamut of types of businesses, nonprofits, and governmental entities that fall into this bucket. We'll also be developing outreach materials. So we have some questions for you. What do you need to round out your asset management implementation? So Heather's group and our group, in conjunction with EPA, hope to provide you good assistance, particularly in those areas where you see that you might need some more assistance. We're deeply experienced with training, with on-site, kind of one-on-one asset management implementation at the system level. And some of the materials you might need for asset implementation, we'd like your feedback on that. So does your primacy agency want to have on-demand webinars or videos related to asset management? So an operator could spend half an hour to an hour and learn about one of those 5 core components. Or is it something that you see a need for day-long training for operator continuing education credits? Is it materials for capacity development people to present at rural water conferences and state-level AWA conferences? There's all sorts of a very broad suite out there for outreach materials and training materials. And if you have any specific suggestions related to boards or non-community water systems, we'd like to hear those as well. On the next slide, I think most of you on the call have a survey that was sent out by ASDWA on asset management implementation. Please fill out those surveys. They really will help make our project successful. And help us make the most of this project. It will help in identifying those agencies that are needing assistance and determine the type of assistance available for implementation. So we want to stretch our dollar within these projects and provide the highest level of assistance we can. And completing these surveys will definitely help in that effort. The next slide, I'm going to turn over to Heather, and she'll talk a little bit about the asset management switchboard.
Oh, thank you, Nick, and I'm glad to be here today. And I just wanted to say that, as Nick mentioned, I was around back in 96, 97, 98 timeframe when states were first developing their capacity strategies, and I don't think there's a whole lot of us left that were around back in the day. So it's kind of nice to see kind of come full circle, and now we're looking at putting asset management, which is a topic near and dear to my heart, into those strategies. So that's a really good thing. I just wanted to talk a few minutes about the asset management switchboard that we put together. And this was a collaboration between ourselves and EPA headquarters, where we were looking at the various resources that already exist in asset management. And many states have resources. Some organizations, such as ourselves at the Environmental Finance Centers, have free available resources that can help utilities, but it was hard to kind of find them. They weren't always in one place, and you had to know where to look. So we worked with EPA to put together this switchboard that is now up and running and available for anybody to use, that kind of collates all of those resources in one place so that people can just come here and kind of get anything they want. We divided it into 5 different categories. So the first one being, what is asset management? So if people wanted information on just the general idea of asset management, what it's about, resources that relate to that will appear there. How do I get started is the next one. So that's more related to what would you do to actually begin an asset management plan. The next one is the 5 core components, so resources that help a utility understand what the components of asset management are, or help you complete any of those. Benefits of asset management, so information related to how an asset management program might provide benefits to utility. And then we have our last category, which we call Beyond the Basics. And Beyond the Basics is kind of anything related to going to the next level with asset management, taking it further, or a resource that didn't really fit neatly into the other 4 categories ended up there. So you can click on these links and it will take you to a host of, over 100 and I think it's about 140-ish resources that are available on the website. And we would like to collect more. So if any of you have an asset management resource that was missed and we didn't get it on this site, please let us know. And we're happy to add that, or if you want to point us to a resource that somebody else has that you feel was missed, we're going to try to keep this, constantly updated with new resources. Again, to provide as much opportunity for systems to have help in asset management, and for states who, personnel who might want to learn about asset management and that type of thing. So we're going to try to keep this a very robust place to go for all kinds of resources to help utilities.
And
yeah,
so here's our contact information. We can be reached by email or phone, and these will be available in the slides as well, so you don't have to try and scribble down emails and phone numbers really quickly.